lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine. It may just linger for a time across those North Sea coasts, but elsewhere, fine, dry, plenty of warm sunshine. Highs of up to 21, possibly 22 or 23 degrees. But where you've got this onshore flow across northern parts of Scotland and down that east coast, always on the cooler side here. So as we go through Sunday evening, it's going to be a bit of a rinse and repeat. We'll see further spells of low cloud just hugging some eastern coast, but out towards the west of Scotland, plenty of fine, dry weather. But there will be a few showers just developing across the far southwest of Scotland. Elsewhere, largely fine and dry. So as we go through Sunday evening and overnight into Monday, well, the return of low cloud does come in to much of eastern areas of England, always staying with the clearer skies further towards the west, where we may see some mist and fog patches developing. And where we see the clearer skies, that's where temperatures will fall. So we'll see a chilly start to Monday morning, but a cool start further towards the east underneath the blanket of low cloud. Then there's a bit of a change as we go through Monday. That low cloud will gradually lift and break, but actually as we go through the afternoon, there will be a bit more cloud developing, especially across northern parts of England, and some showers will bubble up. Some of these could be on the heavy side, but the detail exactly where they are is still uncertain at this stage, but it will still be feeling warm in that sunshine, but cooler across eastern areas in the cloud.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be spending your summer touring in this stylish Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, worth over £67,000. This brand new 2025 model comes complete with kitchen and bathroom areas and enough space to comfortably sleep a family of 4. We'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to add a few of your favourite things, or just spend it however you like. Don't miss out as lines close on the 6th of June. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
100 years young, and you took part, of course, in the World War II.
Yes.
But you were a Wren. Tell us about what you did to help keep the country safe from Nazis.
Well, I did my best. Well, I was so determined that the Germans weren't going to come into our country, the Nazis. And, you know, we all felt the same. We were so angered that they should dare to even think of coming into our country. They'd bombed London like crazy, and they hadn't got it. And we fought them back, and we fought them to the coast, and then we pushed them over into France, and we pursued them there.
It is you back in your service days. Tell us your happiest memories of those wonderful times.
Oh, good heavens. I just think it was meeting people from other parts of Britain and other types of people, you know, different backgrounds, for example. And it was just so releasing of ourselves, and we were dying to push the Nazis back so that they couldn't conquer. It wasn't the German people. They were suffering as badly as we were. But it was just... we were so determined in England then. It wasn't Britain. We were fighting for England, the Welsh were fighting for Wales, and the Scottish were fighting for Scotland.
GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. A big week in Westminster this week with the Prime Minister preparing for tomorrow's Brexit summit and the government celebrating unexpected growth, would you believe? But is it all as rosy as the headline figures make it seem? From the government, I'll be joined by Paymaster General Nick Thomas-Symonds, who is leading the UK's negotiations with the EU. Is the summit going to be a sellout and a surrender? From the Conservative Party, we'll speak to Alex Burghart, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, to respond to Labour's plans. Lord Frost, Boris Johnson's former chief Brexit negotiator, will be here to give me his forensic assessment of the Prime Minister's push for an EU reset and whether Labour is actually trying to reverse the referendum in secret. Plus, I'll be joined by Rupert Lowe MP, who will give me his frank views on Nigel Farage and the rest of Reform UK's leadership. Let's be honest, he's not going to be holding back, so stay tuned for that. And Julie Bindel, the journalist and feminist, will be here to discuss her new books, Lesbians, Where Are We Now? And that momentous Supreme Court ruling that affirmed what she has been arguing for decades, that trans women are not, in fact, women. As ever, we've got 90 minutes of punchy politics to come, so do not even think of going anywhere. As usual, we're going to take a look through the Sunday front pages with Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, James Heal. Before we do that, a quick word, because on the back of all the papers, there's the FA Cup final being won by Crystal Palace. James, a little shout-out, please. Every Saturday, I prepare this show with my brilliant producers, Katie and Elizabeth, and I'm always at a football match. And parents out there of footballing children, you'll understand where I'm coming from in this. And yesterday, my daughter's CCYFC team won the cup. They are cup winners, ladies and gentlemen. And then after this, I've got my son playing in his JP Pro team in the Junior Premier League Nationals at Warwick University. So I'm heading there next. If you see me, do say hello. But I just wanted to say, just bang the drum.
Absolutely.
For parents, soccer mums and dads everywhere who travel the length and breadth of the country to watch their little ones play. Now, James Heal, aside from the football, we have got a lot of coverage of what the right-wing papers, at least, are saying is going to be a great Brexit sellout. How's this EU reset shaping up?
Well, we've got tomorrow the Lancaster House Summit. Everyone's going to be coming to London for the first big EU-UK summit of the Keir Starmer's premiership. And I think there's sort of different issues which people are talking about, one of which, of course, is the defence agreement that's going to be signed. That's the security agreement for Europe. I think most people will be on board with that. But then there's also talk around sort of fishing rights as well, and also potentially aligning with the European Court of Justice as well. So there's lots of things up in the air. The most interesting line, I think, is with the Sunday Times today, which says that potentially EU students are going to pay the same amount as UK students rather than the international students amount. That will potentially be a big hit to the universities and something I don't think people saw coming.
Although that might be preferential to British students who at the moment seem to be being priced out. There was a story some time ago, I think the Sunday Times, Sian Griffiths wrote it, about overseas students coming in with lower grades but getting the places above British students simply because they were paying 3 times as much. The trouble is with all this, and I'll be asking Nick Thomas-Symonds a bit later, is that this is being negotiated by 2 arch Remainers. Both of them backed a second referendum. And you wonder, why is there this need to concede so much? What are we getting in return? this seems to be back to kind of the wars that we were both involved in covering between 2016 and 2019. And I'll be speaking to Lord Frost about what he thinks, because obviously his withdrawal agreement is coming under heavy scrutiny. Oh, it's got holes in it that need to be plugged. Does it? Who really knows? Meanwhile, we've got Labour, I think, in a bit of a pickle here. On the front of the Sunday Times, they brought out their rich list. And it's quite revealing because it's got fewer millionaires and billionaires in it, but also the rich are saying to Keir Starmer, what exactly?
Well, what they're saying is that your policies on non-doms, for instance, and the sort of way in which you can pass on inherited wealth in this country means they don't want to stay around. So the interesting thing is that I think that it's people who have been here for many decades, such as Rockeforte, for instance, Lakshmi Mittal, who have been here previously, are now looking at the way in which wealth is transferred and actually saying, we're in our 70s now, we're not going to hang on much longer, we're going to leave. And I think what's been so striking is the way in which Rachel Reeves had so many warnings about the effect of the non-doms raid before coming into office, and yet pressed on with it. And now what we're seeing is, as the Sunday Times report, the third year in a row, more millionaires are leaving the Sunday Times rich list than in succession. So as a result of that, we're going to suffer a huge amount of tax loss. And I think this is going to be very much a narrative theme, and that's why I put it on the front of the Spectator this week, the flight of the rich from this country.
Yes, and we've got that whole statistic about a millionaire leaving every 45 minutes, which Labour can't seem to react to. I've put that to a number of ministers, and they're like, oh, and some in the party are flirting with wealth taxes, which brings us on to the next story, which is about the dilemma the Prime Minister has trying to keep the left and right of his party happy. Rumours now that he might U-turn on winter fuel. What do you think, James?
Well, I think that the winter fuel thing was brought in and it was going to be a sort of test of totemic strength at the beginning of the Parliament. What's very clear is that over the course of time that the political strengths of this have been completely eroded. It's now seen as a sort of beat stick with which to beat the Labour Party. It came up a lot in Runcorn, speaking to MPs there. And I think that there will be some kind of concession. I don't think it'll be a full sort of U-turn, but I mean, the fact is that the level is sort of 11,500. You can start to claim it if you're beneath that level. And I think they'll probably look at sort of raising that over the next couple of weeks. There's been a number of stories, The Sun on Sunday today, for instance, and The Telegraph also picks up the fact that Rachel Reeves' own constituency, Labour Party, has passed a motion criticising the winter fuel decision. So, I mean, the fact is this is clearly something Labour are very concerned about. It's going to be a big meeting on Monday in Parliament after the EU summit where all the Labour MPs will be talking about welfare. I think the welfare cuts, I think the winter fuel decision, they're all being bundled together. I think Labour figures are very, very worried about sort of 100 plus MPs being in a very mutinous mood.
What's your analysis of Keir Starmer? Because we've had some extraordinary sort of blowing in the wind, haven't we? I mean, on one hand, he starts out in his political career suggesting that any immigration control is inherently racist. We then get speeches about turning the UK into an island of strangers, which some people felt was a bit Enoch Powell-esque. We've got him meant to be caring about the elderly and people on benefits and at the same time cutting their payments. Where do you think he is in this kind of battle between left and right within Labour?
I'd say he's probably sort of right in the mainstream, really. And I think that the great attraction for a lot of Labour people was he was able to move with them. He is a bit of a vacuum. They can sort of push him in whichever direction he needs to go. He is a politician. He will be willing to sort of appeal to the left win the leadership, take over the party, then see the way the winds are going and able to sort of survive and fight the battles he needs to. The danger is, of course, is that you don't have any sort of rigour that runs through the sort of government. And I think that the danger is therefore you do get, a sense that you sort of blow with public opinion. Right now, obviously, he's sort of tacking to the right. He's very conscious. They want to frame the next election as Reform versus Labour. I think sometimes that flies against his own instincts. And I think you saw when the Prime Minister has been facing these criticisms, like he did last week at PMQs, about sort of indulging in kind of race-based rhetoric. He flinches. He thinks he's a good, moral, decent person. I think also that runs up against the reality that he has to react to political situations as they occur. So I'd say he's probably sort of on the soft left, and but he's doing stuff that is partly because of circumstance, but partly also because of expedience and what he needs to be sort of forced into doing.
It's weird, though, the EU reset, which absolutely plays into Nigel Farage's hands, if it looks as if he's betraying the Red Wall.
But it's about expedience. They need growth. And I think that all the people in the Cabinet sitting there saying we need something to unlock growth. You've got The Independent today claiming it's going to lead to £25 billion worth of money coming into the UK.
I mean, do we believe that?
I'm pretty sceptical about that. And I think that, also the future gains of Brexit was always supposed to be about things like AI, genetically modified foods, etc., and our ability to diverge and all of that. But they've got that. They've also got the sense of, I think, borders is the other one. So the argument that you're going to hear a lot, I think, from Nick Thomas-Symonds is, the comprehensive agreement signed by Boris Johnson didn't talk about migration. Well, that's because 2020 we didn't have the small boats crisis. That was a very different thing. So I think they're going to say that, yes, we have this youth mobility scheme, But the benefit of this agreement is going to be that we have much more of a discussion on sort of cross-borders cooperation.
Yes.
So ways to smash the gangs, etc., intelligence sharing, stuff that Yvette Cooper wants.
We've paid the French, I think, 700 million quid since 2014.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
I know, they'll say that we need a closely alignment with Europe to deal with this, but that's one of the arguments you're going to hear on this, I think, Camilla.
Let's move on to what's being described by the Mail on Sunday as woke schools. So, two different stories. Mail on Sunday reporting on this idea that in history now children are being taught that black people built Stonehenge. Yeah. And then we've also got a story in the Sunday Express saying that British history is not being taught at schools. Tell me more.
So this is a new report out by Policy Exchange, the think tank in Westminster, which has done a series of freedom of information requests to different education authorities across the country, in which they look at how much time is being dedicated to bits of what we might consider traditionally our island story, about how sort of great episodes of British history, like Agincourt, Waterloo, etc. And what they're finding is that actually there's a juxtaposition between how much time is being spent on so-called contested narratives. So the argument, for instance, that black people built Stonehenge, the idea that there were black Brits here sort of 7,000 years ago, versus actually I think there's one stat which shows that only sort of 11% of pupils are taught about Waterloo.
Yes.
So this is the whole point, is that we've got a zero-sum game in terms of how many hours you spend on a curriculum, how much time you spend teaching children. And they're saying, look, we've got it completely skewed. Why are we teaching sort of 7, 10-year-olds, etc., about things which may be historically untrue, versus actually teaching them things that we very much know did happen categorically?
But also that's actually really interesting from a historical perspective. You know, Henry VIII and his 6 wives, the Battle of Agincourt. This is all great stuff to get your teeth into. Also, we learned recently, didn't we, James, when we looked at the 80th anniversary of VE Day, you know, the number of children that don't know what VE Day means, don't understand what happened in the Normandy landings. You want to tear your hair out.
Yeah, and maybe if we talk a bit more about Agincourt, there'd be a bit more sort of Remainer skeptics, perhaps, of the sort of EU reset.
Maybe,
but,
yes.
But yeah, as you say, completely, it's an important thing to do. And also, if Keir Starmer wants to build, you know, a nation and sort of talk British values, why not teach about Britain's island story too?
Well, why not? It's a good story to tell, let's be honest. And let's just get on to the other dilemma for Labour this week, which I think is going to rear its head again. And this is this cutting of sentences to free people from prison. We've now got the Mail on Sunday warning of a shoplifting crime wave because we seem to be going in the direction of saying that 1-year jail terms should be axed.
Yes, this is the David Gauke review, and this is ahead of the sentencing bill later this year. And as a result of that, they want to say that, look, if you commit a crime for which you get less jail time than a year, with the exception of sort of violent or sexual offences, you won't have that crime applied. But of course, the danger is that sends a green light to shoplifting. And what's so striking, Camilla, is the fact that, you know, Labour campaigned very heavily, if you may remember, on scrapping the £200 limit whereby prosecutions can occur for shoplifting.
Yes.
They constantly attacked the Conservatives for shoplifting going up. They said there's a crime wave epidemic. We want to stand on the side of small businesses. And yet, as a result of being in office now and having to change tack on sentencing, I think they're going to be into all sorts of compromises like this. It's no surprise Robert Jenrick, laser-focused, was straight on this. And I think that the battle between Shabana Mahmood, the Lord Chancellor, and Robert Jenrick at the dispatch box is going to be one of the defining stories of this next year of Parliament.
Yes, it will be good. And also, when you think about the campaigning the Telegraph's Alison Pearson has done on behalf of Lucy Connolly, you know, the idea that she's still in prison for, OK, it was an abhorrent tweet, she shouldn't have posted it. But to be behind bars, let's let off shoplifters and petty criminals. But if people have said hurty words, let's stick them behind bars.
Absolutely, and I think that that's going to be something that's constantly under the microscope here. All these different sentencing reviews, things that might seem quite sort of dull and boring, etc., actually when coming to focus thinking, hang on a sec, this is two-tier. And I think the two-tier narrative in everything from sort of tax policy to justice is going to be something that the Tories are going to keep on pushing.
James Heal of The Spectator, thank you so much for your expertise this morning. Great paper review. Well, coming up next, we are going to be discussing that EU reset with the Labour Cabinet Minister, Nick Thomas-Symonds. He's the one leading the negotiations, so he's the man in the hot seat when it comes to this summit tomorrow. Don't go anywhere. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, looking further afield, there's plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also some thunderstorms breaking out with an area of low pressure. So across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands, dry, fine, sunny spells. But we do have this area of low pressure, and across parts of Spain, northern Portugal, there will be some heavy and intense downpours, similar across parts of northeastern Europe as well. And that theme continues with sunny spells, but some showers too that could be heavy.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Nick Thomas-Symonds, the Minister for the Cabinet Office, Paymaster General and the Minister for the Constitution and European Union, joins me now. Lovely to see you this morning, Minister, on what I know is going to be a very busy week for you and your department. Tell me this, though. In a written question in September 2024, you said, and I quote, "We have no plans for an EU-wide youth mobility scheme, and there will be no return to freedom of movement." In the same month, the Prime Minister also told reporters that he had, quotes, "no plans for a youth mobility scheme." You have now got a plan for that, so were you lying or...?
So, firstly, Camilla, it's very good to join you on your show, as always. Always a pleasure on a Sunday morning. Before I just come to that specific point, just to say that I'm working very hard at the moment, right up to the wire, to deliver for the United Kingdom and to try to deliver a deal tomorrow that's going to give us more secure borders, that's going to give us lower household bills, and is also going to be good for jobs, good for investment in the United Kingdom. But I'm pleased to take a break out of that to come on to your show. In relation to youth mobility specifically that you've asked me about, I've also said that we would be open to sensible EU proposals. I've been saying that for some months. But firstly, we will not go back to freedom of movement. And secondly, anything has to be consistent with the government's approach in the migration white paper last week to reduce the level of net migration. The level of net migration has been too high. That's what people have been telling us on the doorsteps. It quadrupled between 2019 and 2023 to just under 1 million. This government is committed to bringing the net migration figure down, and that's exactly what we will do.
But it is a form of free movement, isn't it? It's the free movement of European students. And you had ruled it out in September.
It isn't freedom of movement. We have 13 existing youth mobility schemes. We've got a youth mobility scheme with Uruguay, for example. Nobody suggests we've got freedom of movement with Uruguay. I've said it has to be smart. It has to be controlled. That absolutely isn't freedom of movement. And it will also give, by the way, opportunities for young people here in Britain to experience different cultures, to go abroad to work, to go abroad for study. But that is just one aspect, Camilla. What we will be looking at today in these final hours is this deal overall in the national interest, overall in the interests of the British people, and we will only sign it if it does.
Can you guarantee that no money is going to be handed back to Brussels? There's some reports in the papers this morning that the French particularly are asking money for our participation in any defence and security pact.
So we consider individual programmes on their own merits, on the basis of value for money and what's in the UK interest. So, for example, the last government agreed to pay money into the Horizon and Copernicus programmes. Now, that clearly has benefit for the United Kingdom. We supported it in opposition. I was at a project at Imperial College London, not too far from here, only a few weeks ago to see some real cutting-edge research that keeps our university sector world leading, which it is. So we would be looking at, on an individual and particular programme, is it value for money, and is it going to deliver for the British people?
So we will be paying...
That's a very hard-headed approach we take. I call it a ruthlessly pragmatic approach.
OK, but we are going to be paying more money back to Brussels.
No, we look at individual programmes as to whether... We're talking about the general EU budget. What we're talking about here are where there are specific programmes that are in the national interest. We are already, as a government, doing that. The previous government did that too. And it's not about handing money back. What it's about is benefit. And the Horizon, the money we put into Horizon research, I wouldn't describe that as money back to Brussels at all. That is money into a collective programme that is a huge benefit to Britain, and that's the test we will always use right across this.
But my question is this. Are we going to be paying more of British taxpayers' money into this system now because of this deal than we were last week?
No, not into there's a distinction between, not that we're talking about the general EU budget. What we will make, whether it's when we come to the end of this process and we're in the vital final hours, is if there are specific programmes we think are in the national interest. It's not about handing money sort of back into something. It is about making a judgment for benefit for the United Kingdom. And that is, it's a sensible, pragmatic, I call it ruthlessly pragmatic approach. Can we deliver benefits to the United Kingdom? And that's the test we're going to use. But again, I repeat, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed.
Right, and we've heard that before. Forgive me, though, and I know you've been working hard on this, and I know you're a well-respected minister, but are you really somebody who can act in the national interest when in recent years both you and Keir Starmer wanted a second referendum which would be absolutely against the national interest because it would have betrayed a Brexit vote that was voted for by 17.4 million people in this country? And yet you and the Prime Minister campaigned against that democratic mandate time and time again. So do you really know what's in the national interest?
It's this Prime Minister that delivered the trade deals that those who advocated for Brexit in those years absolutely couldn't. So it was Boris Johnson who said that he would secure a trade deal with India by Diwali. He didn't say which Diwali, to be fair, but he completely failed to deliver it. It was numerous previous Conservative Prime Ministers after the Brexit vote who said they could deliver a trade deal with the United States, but didn't. So when we talk about the independent trade policy, the post-Brexit independent trade policy, the Prime Minister who has delivered the deal with India, huge advantage to Scotch whisky exporters. I was in Scotland hearing all about that on Monday. Or with the United States, that has literally saved jobs across our car manufacturing sector, including at Jaguar Land Rover. It wasn't the previous government or the previous Conservative Prime Ministers that delivered, it was this Prime Minister.
Okay, but hang on a minute.
About this Prime Minister delivering. We've seen him actually do it, Camilla.
But you and the Prime Minister are Europhiles. We've got a situation now with what's being billed is correct, that you're going to go for dynamic alignment even though Eurocrats would have accepted mutual recognition. You're going to potentially get us into a situation where we need to provide troops for an EU army. That had been ruled out by the Brexit vote. We're going to be giving away some of our fishing rights, and we don't know what role the ECJ is going to take at this point, but the fear is that, once again, we're going to be rule takers and not rule makers. You've even got Red Wall Labour MPs saying this is a betrayal of Brexit.
It really isn't. It's about making Brexit work. And whether it's the Prime Minister, myself or the rest of the government, we've moved on from the debates of the past. And my sense going around the country is the country has as well. This is about a hard-headed assessment of what is in the UK interest in the mid-2020s, not the debates of 9, nearly 10 years ago for the referendum. And what we will be delivering, let's just take standards at the moment, because you've just raised the issue of standards. What we do is we go into negotiations to protect Britain's high standards. That's exactly what we did in the negotiations with the United States, where it makes sense to have common alignment on standards because it delivers jobs and growth for the British people. Of course, we take a pragmatic view, but to your point...
Why not mutual recognition?
This idea of a European army that you've mentioned, absolutely not. What we are doing in terms of defence and security is taking into account we've had a return to war in Europe in 2022. Europe has to step up on defence. That's what this government is doing, investing 2.5% of GDP in defence by 2027. It is absolutely in our national interest to be working closely with European partners at a time when war has returned to our continent, but working very closely as well with the United States and using our special relationship with the United States, which is exactly what the Prime Minister has been doing so well, putting Britain back on the world stage.
But why not mutual recognition? Why dynamic alignment?
Well, look, what I'm talking about in terms of standards, I'm sure you'll appreciate, Camilla, it's not in the British national interest in these final hours for me to negotiate across your show, important though it is on a Sunday morning. What we have said in terms of standards is our starting point is what is in our national interest. We are a high standards jurisdiction. That is what we defended when we were negotiating with India, when we were negotiating with the United States. And this is our sovereignty that we are exercising. Sovereignty to have these different trade deals. Our sovereignty that we are exercising in terms of where we choose common alignment on standards, but it's for jobs, growth and putting money in people's pockets.
Nick Thomas-Symonds, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to Alex Burghart, the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and David Frost, the guy who negotiated the original withdrawal agreement. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back in just a jiffy.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
That's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GBNews.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
What do we learn in the letter that Stoker thought about Dracula?
So the letter was sent 6 weeks after Dracula's publication in July 1897. So at this point, it's not, Dracula that we know of now, this sort of almost cultural myth. It's a new and uncertain work, which had been reviewed incredibly mixed. Some said it was amazing, some said it was weird and quite strange. In the letter, Stoker sent out a number of first editions to friends, and one actually went to Prime Minister Gladstone as well, basically asking for praise and also asking, here is a signed first edition for you, please let me know what you think of it. Most are very formal. They would just be like, enclosed as first edition. With this one, it is to an unidentified Williams, we believe a friend from the theatre circle, but still yet to be identified, in which he encloses the book, signs the book to him, states, how is enclosed for high, which is a very informal way of saying how is enclosed for kind of, this is high watermark, it's amazing writing. And then, Lord, forgive me, I am quite shameless, which is...
How do you interpret that?
There are two interpretations. One is he's shameless for asking a friend his thoughts, which I don't believe. The other is, Lord, forgive me, I am quite shameless. Dracula was a weird, very strange book, and still is to this day. And I think it was Stoker, in a very cheeky and quite conversational way, being like, to whoever, he wrote, my dear William, so a very close friend, clearly. Lord, forgive me, I am quite shameless for publishing Dracula, which I think is... most Stoker letters are very formal, and we rarely see much of Stoker's personality. I think to know that he was potentially quite cheeky and quite funny, for me, adores Stoker and Dracula, is a lovely touch, I think, yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Lots more still to come. We're going to hear from Alex Burghart MP with the Tory response to Labour's EU reset. Lord Frost will also join me with his take on the PM's strategy. Is Labour trying to sabotage Brexit? Rupert Lowe MP will give me his no-holds-barred verdict on Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And Julie Bindel will be here to talk about her new book, Has the Tide Finally Turned on Transgender Activism? But first, here's your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Camilla, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, Pope Leo has been formally inaugurated as pontiff at a mass in St Peter's Square. The new pontiff has greeted crowds of faithfuls as he headed to the Vatican in the Pope-mobile, marking the first time he's travelled in the vehicle since his election. Pope Leo delivered his first Mass on the 8th of May, shortly after a conclave elected him as the new Pope, using the service to call for unity in the Catholic Church and an end to war. Elsewhere, a Mexican Navy ship has crashed into New York's Brooklyn Bridge, leaving 2 crew members dead and at least 17 others injured. The Mexican Navy said in a post on X that the ship, an academy training vessel with 277 people on board, was also damaged in that collision. Police say the vessel lost power before the crash, but that the bridge has since reopened. At least 100 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza overnight and into this morning, according to the Gaza's health ministry. Women and children were reportedly among the dead, as Israel launches an escalation of its war in Gaza to ramp up pressure on terror group Hamas to agree to a temporary ceasefire. The Israeli military had no immediate comment on the latest strikes. It's previously said it has escalated its military action to ramp up pressure on Hamas to agree to that ceasefire. That coming as peace talks between Israel and Hamas take place in Qatar this weekend. And it was a night to remember at the 69th Eurovision Song Contest in Switzerland, but not quite for the UK's entry.
The hell does
Remember Monday placed 19th, receiving nil points from the public vote. Austria and Israel went head-to-head, but ultimately it was Austria who won their 3rd Eurovision with musician JJ's techno opera song, Wasted Love. Well, Israel's Yuval Raphael, who survived the 7th of October 2023 attacks, was the runner-up with piano ballad New Day Will Rise, performed in Hebrew, French and English. The singer was left shaken and upset after two pro-Palestinian protesters rushed towards her during her grand final performance. Organisers confirmed a backstage crew member was hit with paint but was not hurt. Those are the latest headlines for now. It's back to Camilla.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Lots more still to come. Lord Frost is going to join me with his take on the Labour Brexit and reset deal with Brussels. Rupert Lowe MP will speak frankly about Reform UK and Nigel Farage. And Julie Bindel will be here to talk about her new book, Lesbians, Where Are They Now? And reflect on that latest ruling from the Supreme Court. But first, joining me now is Alex Burghart, MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Lovely to see you this morning. Now, Kemi Badenoch says that the Great Brexit reset is a surrender deal, but Labour are saying, well, sorry, the deal that Boris Johnson negotiated wasn't good enough. Alex, can you hear me?
Hi, Camilla.
Hello, can you hear me? Was the withdrawal agreement full of holes that need to be plugged?
So what's... No, look, so what we're seeing at the moment is, I think we're on the brink of this big capitulation, and that one of the big things that was won when we left the EU was that we could make our own rules, we could make our own regulations. And actually what we're seeing is that the government appears poised to sign up to what's called dynamic alignment. And dynamic alignment means that we will have to follow the EU's rules on a whole host of regulation that affect trade and goods and fishing, goods and food. But we won't get a say on how those rules are created, and that's not what the British people voted for in 2016. What British people voted for was independence and sovereignty, and it looks like this is just going to be a rollover on that.
I know, but Boris Johnson said it was an oven-ready deal, but hasn't it caused problems at the border with long waits for lorries, food going off inside, exports down, imports down? Problems over defence and security pacts, still a problem with migration across the border. I appreciate stopping the boats wasn't a priority in 2020, but it's become a priority now.
So if you look back to 2015, Camilla, the volume of UK trade with the rest of the world was about £1 trillion, just over £1 trillion. And by 2023, that had become over £1.5 trillion. So all this nonsense that people were coming out with during the Brexit debate, all this stuff that we heard from the Remainers and the Labour Party about how it was going to kill UK trade with the world, just turned out to be total rubbish, right? So you always have to look at these debates through the prism of what has actually happened since. What's actually happened since is that UK trade with the rest of the world has grown very sharply despite all of the nonsense that people spoke at the time.
But isn't it the case that Theresa May, your former Prime Minister and Conservative Prime Minister, absolutely bungled the negotiations almost from the very beginning, came out with this checkers deal? Boris Johnson then inherits a bad deal. He's got a hospital pass that he tries to kind of metaphorically polish, and you end up with a kind of lousy withdrawal agreement that puts a divider in the Irish Sea, and the whole thing's a bit of a nightmare, simply because the Conservatives, unfortunately, didn't negotiate well from the very beginning.
Yeah, if you remember that very early on in this process, the Conservatives didn't have a majority in Parliament, being opposed by parties of all stripes. I'm very pleased that you've got Lord Frost coming on your show later, Camilla, because I think what Frost managed to do in those negotiations was pull the iron out of the fire. He brought an end to free movement. He brought an end to our regulatory alignment with the EU. He got the first stage and a good deal on Britain's fish, and he managed to put us in a position where we were truly out of the EU. What the Labour Party is now trying to do in government is move us back in, but with none of, you know, if you're part of the EU, you get to sit at a table and decide what the rules are going to be. If you're not, you don't. But to then be on the outside and to take the EU's rules just sounds like the worst of both worlds to me. So I think that what they're going to do, what the new government's going to do tomorrow is a hiding to nothing.
I know, but some of the reason why the Brexit deal was sabotaged or nearly sabotaged was because actual Tories were railing against it. You had Tories in your own party trying to reverse the referendum. And that is ultimately why, along with your failure to control immigration, that you're now having a horrific slump in the polls. You didn't deliver on Brexit.
There were a few Conservative MPs. We did deliver on Brexit, Camilla. You know full well that we left the EU, we took back control of our fishing waters, we took back control of our money, we took back control of our laws, not subject to the ECJ anymore. So the idea that we didn't leave the EU is wrong, and you'll be able to ask Lord Frost about that later on. But the real body of people in that Brexit Parliament who were opposing us were the Labour Party, many of whom are now forming this administration, many of whom are now in power, and these are the people who are trying to take us back into the EU, but without the power of being in the EU. It's the worst of both worlds.
OK, tell me about your deportation bill. Why now? How will it work?
So the reason that Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, has been talking about this recently is because Labour has its own wrong-headed legislation going through, and Chris has been seeking to make amendments to that. And what we want to do is bring in a hard legal cap that on immigration Parliament would have to vote for every year. Politicians of all stripes have to stand up and say exactly what they thought the right level of immigration would be. We will set out what that number is close to the election, but it will be very, very much below what Labour's providing right now.
Closer to the election? Why can't you tell us what it is now?
Because we need to do it. One of the problems that we always have with the immigration debate is that people don't do the detailed work on it. It's clear that the Labour Party didn't do the detailed work on it going into the last election. We want to make sure that whatever cap number we come up with is absolutely deliverable and much lower than the level we have now. We are in opposition. We have time to do that thinking. We're going to do it, and we're going to get it right.
How can you deliver it when you've never delivered it before?
This is a new generation of people who are in charge of the Conservative Party now. We will absolutely get this right for the British people.
When are you going to tell us what this cap is? Because by the time of the next general election, that's not soon enough, is it? I mean, you're fighting elections in Wales and Scotland next year. So why can't you put a figure on it in the next, say, couple of months?
We will not have a chance of being in power until 2029. And the fact is that before the next election, everybody needs to know, the country needs to know what they're voting for. We will set that out well in advance of the general election so that people have a real choice between a Conservative Party who has an actual plan to bring down immigration to much lower levels and a Labour Party that is going to allow it to spiral off into the stratosphere.
I'm getting the sense that you're getting closer to announcing that you do want to leave the ECHR.
What makes you think that, Camilla?
Because there's a lot of rhetoric in Tory circles about moving in that direction. I think you've acknowledged that Robert Jenrick has had huge cut-through on that compared to Kemi Badenoch. And in order to deport the number of people you're wanting to deport and actually control the borders, it might be your only option. Also, you've hinted at it because you've put an amendment on Labour legislation to try and disapply parts of it to immigration policy. So that's 5 good reasons why you might do it. And the 6th reason will be because you've got Nigel Farage and Reform breathing down your neck, beating you in the polls at every turn, and you're not trusted to bring the numbers down.
So in the leadership contest, Kemi was very clear that we would probably have to leave the ECHR, but that we weren't going to leap forward to have a policy without having gone through all of the legal issues that are at stake. One of them, for example, which people don't talk about enough, is the failure of the Refugee Convention, which Britain was drawn up after the end of the last war and is now hopelessly out of date. And that has actually been one of the reasons why the UK government has lost court cases over trying to deport people. We need to get everything out, put it on the table and get it right so that there is something that will actually work. We have enough of people just making headline announcements. This has got to be a plan that really works, and we have got the right legal minds on it. We're going to get a solution and we're going to be able to deliver it after the next election.
Even the Prime Minister is now saying that he regards Reform to be the unofficial opposition, but the real opposition. He's right, isn't he?
Absolutely not. We're the second largest party in the House of Commons. We still have far more councillors than Reform. We are the challengers to this government. We're the we're still.
How many councillors do you have compared to Reform?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
How many do you have?
I think we've got about 5 times as many councillors across the country as Reform do. We had a very bad set of local elections earlier this month. No one's denying that, but we still have a huge number of councillors across the country. We're still the second largest party in Parliament. And as you see time go along in this Parliament, you'll see that there is only one major party that has a clear plan for the country that it can deliver on. You'll see a Labour Party that is failing to deliver for British businesses and British people, and you'll see a Reform that is just chasing headlines but not coming up with clear and detailed proposals. And
yes or no question to finish, Mr. Burghart. Yes or no question to finish. Will you accept Rupert Lowe into your party? Yes or no?
I greatly respect Rupert Lowe, and I think he's been given a very, very hard time by Reform. That would we consider everyone's application to the Conservative Party, but as
so it's
far
not
as I'm
a no,
aware,
is it?
Rupert has not made. It's no, it's not a no. But
Is
I
it
don't
a
know that Rupert
qualified
will want to join. I don't. I think that we would look very closely and carefully at any application from Mr. Lowe should he wish to make one.
Interesting, Alex Burghart. What a note on which to finish. With that bombshell, thank you very much for joining me this morning. As Alex Burghart just alluded to there, I've got Lord Frost coming on the show. Next, he's the one who negotiated the withdrawal agreement on behalf of Boris Johnson's government. So what he's got to say about this great Labour EU reset is going to be worth watching. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Well, who better to discuss the EU reset than Lord Frost, Boris Johnson's former chief Brexit negotiator? Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now, your withdrawal agreement has been criticised. Your oven-ready deal wasn't good enough, says Nick Thomas-Symonds. That's why they're having to renegotiate with the EU.
Yeah, I'm afraid Nick is sort of believing his own propaganda, really, about this. The withdrawal agreement, the trade agreement that we did back in 2019, 2020, the trade agreement is the biggest trade agreement ever. It's the biggest, the widest, the deepest trade agreement ever. Zero tariffs on everything, zero quotas. It preserves free trade. A lot of people seem to think we have no trade agreement with the EU at all. We've got this massive one that has been working perfectly well. But of course, Labour have to say it's working badly to justify all the concessions that they're about to make in the next couple of days.
But do they not have a point when it comes to queues at borders? We have heard stories about lorries being left to wait at the border and food going off and all the rest of it. Do they not have a point about no agreement on defence and security? And do they not have a point when it comes to mutual cooperation on both smuggling gangs and bringing down immigration?
So there were some teething troubles in the first days of this deal, but they've settled down and there's no evidence of queues, there's no evidence of problems. If, for example, you're thinking about airports, we already let European travellers through e-gates in UK airports. It's them that don't allow...
other way around,
Yeah, so they don't allow us through. So if there's a problem, it's generated on the EU side, not on ours. Defence agreement, we didn't see the need for a defence agreement. We're perfectly happy to talk about it, but we wanted there to be something that we got in return. EU didn't want to offer that, so we didn't have a defence agreement. Now Labour seem to be willing to offer it up for nothing, really. I don't know what we're getting out of this deal that's going to come in the next day or so.
What are we getting out of this deal?
Well, I genuinely don't know.
It's a bit worrying, isn't it? What do you mean you don't know? I mean, are we going to get better access through European airports ourselves?
I mean, it looks like we might get that, although even that doesn't seem to be pinned down. But we're paying a very high price for it, accepting of EU law, accepting EU courts, giving up control of our fishing grounds, giving up control of our carbon price,
Is it definitely all of that? I mean, let's just talk about fishing, because that was kind of like the totemic issue of Brexit in many respects. What do you fear we're conceding here? And why are we doing it?
So we had to accept a slightly longer transition period than we wanted in 2020, but that transition is coming to an end in the middle of next year, and we get full control of all our fishing grounds. So it's a particularly bad moment to suddenly decide to give all that up again and allow EU fishing boats to carry on fishing.
But why are we doing it? How do we benefit from this?
We don't benefit in any way from it. What the Labour negotiators seem to have done is accept the EU's view that they've done what they usually do, which is to say, we won't talk about what you want to talk about until you've accepted the things that we want. And they put fishing on the table, and Labour have meekly gone along with it.
So spell it out for me. What do you think the EU is playing at here? Are they looking at Britain and thinking, well, we don't really like the fact that they've signed these trade deals with India and America. We've been put to the back of the queue. It's actually very inconvenient when you consider Project Fear that Britain is growing faster than the Eurozone. We want a piece of the UK pie again. And by the way, we don't really like that they Brexited in the first place. I mean, is that what we're getting down to here, David?
I think all of that is kind of swirling around, you know, in the way they look at this. They never wanted Britain to be a completely free country. They in 2020 they worked really hard till the very last moment to try and keep us subject to their laws and courts. Now they've spotted they've got a Labour government that really doesn't mind giving those things away. So they've begun a negotiation that's ended in that.
You could say that they're hurrying to do this, fearful perhaps, and I'm sorry to say this about your own party, that Reform might win the next general election, and then they're dealing with Nigel Farage. I mean, can anything that's been done in this deal or going to be done in this deal this week be undone?
It can be, it should be, and it's very good that both the Conservatives and Reform have said they will reverse it if they come to power. That's quite a serious thing for the EU to think about. And if we do come back to power in 2029, as I hope, it's important we've said that now. So we've got the moral authority. this won't stand.
Can you explain, because I have been asking Nick Thomas-Symonds about dynamic alignment versus mutual recognition. Now, dynamic alignment is a much closer following of the EU rulebook than mutual recognition, which is kind of like a trusting relationship where you basically say, look, we're both trying to achieve the same thing here.
Exactly.
So why is dynamic alignment sort of an overkill approach to this? That's what's been suggested in some of the papers this morning.
That's right, and I think that's what we're going to end up with on food and agriculture rules. So dynamic alignment is where you just accept the EU's rules. The EU gets to make them, it gets to say how they should be enforced. If it doesn't think you're implementing them right, it can bring in its own court in the case of disputes. We don't get any say.
I mean, this is exactly what we were trying to avoid.
Precisely. We worked very hard in 2019, 2020 to avoid this happening. There's a specific provision in the 2020 agreement that says there is no EU law in this agreement. Now we're just giving this away.
But Thomas-Symonds is insisting we're doing this in the national interest. It's nothing to do with the fact that both I and Keir Starmer lobbied for a second referendum. And can I point you towards the Labour manifesto, which expressly says, these are our red lines. We will not re-enter the single market and customs union. Do you believe them?
I'm sure they would like to re-enter single market and customs union, and if they accept dynamic alignment on food and agriculture, as seems likely, that is quite a big chunk of the single market. In fact, it isn't everything, but
so it's kind of returning to the single market by stealth?
Yes, the single market is a lot of different rules, and we're starting to accept those things. So I don't wholly trust them. You know, this is a first step. One mustn't exaggerate it. It's not the end of Brexit, but it is a step back towards being controlled by the European Union in important areas of our national life. And that's not what people voted for in 2016.
On youth mobility, I mean, let me be devil's advocate here and think on behalf of my oldest child who loves Spain and speaking Spanish. As a Gen Zer, she may well be saying, well, thank goodness as a student, if I can go and move and live in Europe and Europeans can come to our universities, maybe that's no bad thing. What are your concerns about that scheme?
So, I mean, first, it is possible to travel to Europe. It is possible to study in Europe. It is possible to work in Europe. The terms have changed. You can't just rock up and kind of do whatever you want, but it is still possible and people do still do it. So I think there's a bit of a myth around there. The second reason is if you end free movement, it ends for both. We can't expect to keep being able to send our students out to Europe while controlling how they come into the UK. So at a time when people are so concerned about immigration, when the levels of migration have been so high, it seems like at best imprudent to allow in a whole new cohort of European students.
Not least when you said you weren't going to do it back in September.
Or last week.
Indeed.
Yes.
David Frost, thank you very, very much indeed for your expertise on this morning. Lovely to see you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, coming up next, I'm going to be speaking to Rupert Lowe on reform and his unfiltered views on Nigel Farage. Don't go anywhere. It's an interview well worth watching.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a bit of a slow start out there. We've got quite a lot of low cloud, but once that lifts and breaks, we'll see plenty of warm sunshine. So there's a lot of low cloud across northeastern areas at the moment, across eastern parts of the Midlands and towards the southeast. But once the sun gets going, that will lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine. It may just linger for a time across those North Sea coasts, but elsewhere, fine, dry, plenty of warm sunshine, highs of up to 21, possibly 22 or 23 degrees. But where you've got this onshore flow across northern parts of Scotland and down that east coast, always on the cooler side here. So as we go through Sunday evening, it's going to be a bit of a rinse and repeat. We'll see further spells of low cloud just hugging some eastern coast, but out towards the west of Scotland, plenty of fine, dry weather. But there will be a few showers just developing across the far southwest of Scotland. Elsewhere, largely fine and dry. So as we go through Sunday evening and overnight into Monday, well, the return of low cloud does come in to much of eastern areas of England, always staying with the clearer skies further towards the west, where we may see some mist and fog patches developing. And where we see the clearer skies, that's where temperatures will fall. So we'll see a chilly start to Monday morning, but a cool start further towards the east underneath the blanket of low cloud. Then there's a bit of a change as we go through Monday. That low cloud will gradually lift and break. But actually, as we go through the afternoon, there will be a bit more cloud developing, especially across northern parts of England, and some showers will bubble up. Some of these could be on the heavy side, but the detail exactly where they are is still uncertain at this stage. But it'll still be feeling warm in that sunshine, but cooler across eastern areas in the cloud.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. A little earlier, Rupert Lowe MP joined me with his blunt assessment of Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Rupert Lowe, thank you very much indeed for joining me on my GB News show this morning. It's been quite an eventful week. Now, notwithstanding how Reform have treated you, and I'm sure we'll get on to that, I was really intrigued to read a piece by Gwaine Towler, who you and I are both very familiar with. He's worked for you for a long time and worked alongside Nigel Farage in his various political guises. And he says the reason that you and Reform have fallen out is because you're no team player, you're a solo act, you're all in and then out on your own terms. It's less about insight, more about spotlight, he says.
I don't think that's true, Camilla. I mean, as you know, Gawain is one of Nigel's loyal attack dogs, even though he was treated quite badly, I think, by the party himself. But again, like a lot of these people, they're probably hoping for a seat in due course. So there's a lot of glue at the moment holding it together, and that's largely based on what I call the 5 golden rules of business, which is what's in it for me. I'm a team player. I've been a team player. I think people can see from what I was doing on Twitter, I wasn't promoting myself. I was promoting the need for change in Britain. I was promoting the deficiency of the two-party system. And as I've said in many interviews, I was intent on installing Nigel as the next Prime Minister and playing my part in changing the way we're governed. I don't think that's in any way not being a team player. If anybody's not a team player, it's Nigel and the sycophantic lightweights who surround him, who are just not going to deliver for the British people.
OK, so when we spoke in the week, because you kindly gave me an interview for the Daily Tea, the Daily Telegraph's podcast, you said to me that you felt that you were more powerful on social media than Nigel Farage. And I looked at some of the figures on that.
I said that, Camilla, in terms of page impressions. I did qualify that by saying he has more followers than me, but actually your power on social media, and it's not just X, it's also on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and various other social media platforms that we use to win an election in Great Yarmouth, where I had very little help, if any, from Reform. I did it pretty much on my own. I funded it myself. Indeed, my last election address, they failed to send out my second one, which you get free. So look, I mean, that's all in the past. My social media, the driver for it is content, Camilla. It's content which drives how many page impressions. So if you, and I see this because if we do go quiet, and obviously this recent unpleasantness has meant that to some extent I did pull my horns in a bit, which I suspect it was the intention. You know, the actual number of page impressions and the amount of traffic does drop off. You have to generate the content.
Social media isn't real life, though, is it? When JL Partners, the polling company, went out into the country and asked more than 2,000 British voters to identify your photograph, 86% of them couldn't. 7 in 10 Reform voters didn't know who you were. So are you in danger of going from Rupert to Hoopert after all this?
Well, if that's the case, Camilla, I mean, I was in football for quite a long time, and I actually spent quite a long time trying to make myself less well-known because as you may be surprised to hear, I actually prefer a bit of anonymity. But I'm now up in if you like, in the highlights or with the grease paint on, and I'm now intent on, having been badly treated, it's made me even more determined to do what I think needs to be done. Because I think I've said to you in the past, I think it was on Thursday last week, if we don't change the way we're governed by 2029, I think Britain will self-immolate.
So tell us what you are going to do. What are you going to do next?
I mean, I'm not interested in some irrelevant survey, so let's park that one. I mean, it is what it is, and it doesn't make any difference to what's going on. And if you and people like you and many of my colleagues in Parliament, I don't think fully understand the power of social media. It is incredibly powerful. It is a fast developing area, a bit like AI, and it will change the way in which people interface. And indeed, in my case, I think it's been my biggest protector, because I actually can get my message out and people can read what I'm saying, what's happened to me. Which, if you were just a lone voice, Camilla, the malign forces of whoever, the establishment, other people trying to damage your interests, ultimately you can't get your message across. So I'm very grateful to people like Elon Musk, to other sort of entrepreneurs who develop these platforms. They're an incredibly important part of being free now.
I mean, did you have your head turned slightly by Elon Musk suggesting that Nigel Farage wasn't the person to run Reform, kind of gave you a nod? Some people say you sort of got drunk on the Musk Kool-Aid.
Not at all, Camilla. I didn't even pay any attention. I mean, that's his opinion. It turns out, in my view, I now agree with him.
He retweeted it.
I now agree with him. I didn't agree with him at the time. And in fact, I came out in support of Nigel at the time. If you check the various social media posts that were made, but now I think, as usual, he was ahead of the game.
Okay, so how are you going to get ahead of the game? What are you going to do next? Are you going to start your own new party?
Well, I told you, Camilla, when we spoke last Thursday, that a reformed Conservative Party would be probably the most powerful vehicle to do that. Now, I told
so you'd like to join the Tories if they get their act together?
Hang on, you all love jumping in before I finished. No, so I said, but the problem is, and I did say this to you last week, that the Tory party is dysfunctional at the moment. It's got too many Lib Dem MPs, which is a legacy of David Cameron's selection processes, which were based on quotas, not on merit. And people shouldn't be in the House of Commons on anything other than merit. Any other driver is not right. So the Tory party has a lot of reforming to do. And the question is, can they do that? And you asked me what I'm going to do. I was under police investigation until last Wednesday. As you know, I heard the news that the case had been dropped, which I always thought it would because I didn't do anything. But you never know in Britain. Now there are probably a lot of innocent people languishing in prison, and I intend to pursue that. But no, so one other option is I set up my own party. I mean, another option would be to join Reform, but I number one, you don't win anything with bad people. And I from what Nigel has said, from what Tice has said, from what virtually all the commentators have said, they wouldn't welcome me back anyway. So look, I've got a clean sheet of paper, Camilla, and I'm going to work out what I do. We haven't got much time. And it's incredibly important that a lot of thought goes into what happens next. But put it this way, I'm more intent than ever on delivering the change that I think is necessary if we are to restore Britain to the kind of place which I used to love, and I think when it's functioning properly like it was when I was growing up, it's the best place in the world to live.
Can I just confirm on the whole kind of reformed Tory offering, have they approached you? Have you approached them? Has any discussions taken place between you and other senior Tories?
No, but I mean, I see them all in Parliament. I was there on Friday. We were all voting on the assisted dying bill, or some amendments to the assisted dying bill. So I see them, you know, I get on with them. You're in a very, very unhealthy, sort of overcrowded place. And of course you bump into each other, and of course you talk to each other. And as I've said, there are some very able young Tories, and there's, I think, some light within their camp. But I think there's a lot of what I call brambles and overgrowth that's stopping that light coming through and showing what needs to be done. And until they can change that, Camilla, I don't think the Tories are able to be as powerful as they should be in delivering the kind of metamorphosis that Maggie Thatcher did in 79, after we'd had to witness trade unions having beer and sandwiches in number 10 for about 10 years.
Yes.
And at the same time, making Britain a laughing stock in the world.
How about Ben Habib? Have you had any conversations with him, or indeed, there are quite a few people who have fallen out with Nigel Farage over the years, Stephen Wolfe, Catherine Blakelock, Robert Kilroy-Silk and others. Have you felt like you might want to band together with some of these people?
Some able people, Camilla. There's a bit of a theme there, isn't there? So have I talked? I talked to Ben. Yes, I like Ben. He and I, as you know, he and I had played a big part in both the Brexit Party and indeed the Reform Party, which effectively is the legal entity that was the Brexit Party. So the Reform Party, when Nigel left, Ben, myself, and Richard Tice deserves credit for this, we kept it going and we all continued. And I was one of the people who encouraged Nigel to come back. I mean, Nigel's got a lot of strengths. As you say, one of them is that he's very widely known.
Well, the other one is surely that he has managed to get reform up to 28%. I mean, you have to admit, regardless of your falling out, reform's success is largely on the basis of Nigel Farage, isn't it? Even you must, as an intelligent man, have to concede that.
Camilla, I've just said to you, he's got a lot of qualities, and particularly, as I said, as a sort of an orator and a ballroom entertainer, he's very good. Is it totally down to just Nigel? No, I've just told you it's not. A lot of the foundations were put in by other people.
It's largely down to him, though, isn't it?
It's not. Hang on. It's not just about one man. And this country is not going to be sorted out by one man. And it's certainly not going to be sorted out by one man unless he's surrounded by other able people in the form of a shadow cabinet. And he develops proper policies, proper structure, and a plan to sort out the malign legislation which is built up under Blair, Cameron, and all the other lightweight prime ministers that we've had really since since Maggie, really. I mean, I as you know, I sort of discount John Major as a sort of blip, but he should never have won that election in '92 with his soapbox. But there we go. We would have had Neil Kinnock as the alternative. We probably never had another socialist prime minister in Britain's history. But look, that's all in the history books now. But so no, it's not about one man. It's not about. It's about a group of people. And if you look at what Maggie did, the philosophy didn't come from just Maggie. It came from a group of people. And it came from the fact that they understood that Britain had been deeply damaged by a socialist sort of Wilson, Callahan sort of period of government. And it had to have radical change, which it did. And look how
but to bring the conversation full circle, this is what I mean, Rupert Lowe, when I ask you, are you going to start up your own party? You've just pointed out that Margaret Thatcher couldn't do it by herself. Nigel Farage can't do it by himself. Rupert Lowe can't do it by himself.
Well, he can't, and he, at the moment, it is, as I've said, the cult of Nigel, and if he doesn't change that, he definitely won't deliver for the British people, and that's my opinion now. And you won't change that, and equally, you don't win anything with bad people. So, I think what they've done to me, Camilla, was using the very lawfare that Reform was intent on getting rid of. And that's just poor action.
All right, Rupert Lowe, for time reasons, we do have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Pleasure, Camilla.
That was me speaking to Rupert Lowe earlier. Coming up, Julie Bindel joins me to talk about her new book on lesbian identity and what the Supreme Court ruling means for the gender debate. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. Well, looking further afield, there's plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also some thunderstorms breaking out with an area of low pressure. So across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands, dry, fine, sunny spells. But we do have this area of low pressure, and across parts of Spain, northern Portugal, there will be some heavy and intense downpours, similar across parts of northeastern Europe as well. And that theme continues with sunny spells, but some showers too that could be heavy.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Got about another month to go.
So why did you decide to do it? Because I'll tell you what strikes me as being particularly interesting is that most people will not be familiar to seeing someone in your garb sitting on a bus. I mean, you will become a talking point. Is that part of it?
Well, the central part is not me, of course. The central part is the Hospital of St Cross, where I live, which is an absolutely wonderful place to live. And I'm thoroughly enjoying myself there.
Can I ask you, Brother John, how much planning has gone into this? Because I have to say, if I was catching a bus all around the country, I'd be very, very anxious about routes, about where I can get on the bus and timings, all that kind of stuff. So how much work has gone in behind the scenes?
Well, I started before Christmas, and of course, the problem is that at that time it was the winter bus schedules, and then we have the spring bus schedules, and we're now moving to summer bus schedules. So it's all a bit touch and go as when you go along as how you get on. But basically, the first thing to do was to establish it was possible to do. So I worked out all the routes round. And I have to say that my bus pass isn't valid in Scotland and Wales, but I have the support of the bus companies, bus operators, who are being very kind and generous and allowing me free passage in Scotland and Wales, where I wouldn't otherwise be covered.
Oh, that's fantastic news. And I have to say, though you look in excellent health and fair fettle, 85...
But I don't have a tattoo, you see. I don't have a tattoo.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now in the studio is Julie Bindel, journalist and feminist and author of this new book, Lesbians, Where Are We Now? And we'll get on to lesbians and indeed the kind of debate between lesbians and the transgender community in just a minute, but can we have a word on Gary Lineker? Gary Lineker told The Telegraph in the week, trans people are some of the most persecuted on the planet. I would imagine it's women, isn't it, on the planet, in Iran and Iraq and other places?
It's quite extraordinary, this Orwellian twist that trans activists have put on who's oppressed and by whom. Suddenly, feminists, those that campaign against male violence and the like, are oppressing men who claim to be women.
Yes. Poor old men.
It's terrible.
Once again, are we seeing the oppression of feminists and women by men? I mean, it does strike me as odd. You've campaigned for women's rights and equality in general for decades, right? And yet we're going through this period of misogyny unlike any other seen in recent history. How can it be that women have got more rights and yet we seem to be more hated than ever?
It's the backlash. And whenever we make great strides and progress, whenever we win battles that can, of course, be unwon, then there's a misogynistic backlash. The problem with trans activism, and this particular backlash, because I've lived through quite a few since the end of the 1970s, is that the majority of the liberal bourgeoisie jumped on board and decided to support misogynistic trans activists against us nasty feminists.
Yes, nasty, radical feminists. But where are we now post the Supreme Court ruling? Because you would have thought that that very clear definition suggesting that trans women are not in fact women would clear all of this up. We'd have guidance issued now, changing the narrative around trans and restating women's rights as being what they should have been in the first place. But I don't think that's really happened.
Well, I mean, the arguments that were put forward in the Supreme Court, and I sat through the argument stage as well as the decision, was very persuasive when it came to how you could possibly include men who are just blokes in the category of lesbians for the purposes of going along to a women-only event.
Yes.
So you could see the judges thinking, this is not workable. If Dave, who's got a gender recognition certificate, calls himself Cindy, but just looks like a bloke and is a bloke, comes along and says, I want to come to your lesbian event, and we have to allow him to do that because, of course, you also can't ask these men to show their gender recognition certificate because that's discriminatory. How on earth is there any category of lesbians? What does the word woman even mean? So the Supreme Court clarified what the law had always said since 2010, the Equality Act. That was done and dusted. But the most important thing is the normative effect, the fact that this is now the beginning of the end for trans activism. This is now something that has taken the wind out of the sail of the likes of Stonewall, that had been telling all of these big corporations and institutions that they should follow Stonewall law, in other words, the law that trans activists wanted, rather than the law of the land.
But there's still people clinging onto it for dear life. I mean, somebody was emailing me in the week. She's working in a kind of public sector role. She keeps on getting all of these emails going, don't worry, we're still going to protect transgender people despite the Supreme Court ruling. Now, by the way, I don't want transgender people not to be protected, and they already are under the Equality Act. But we've got the NHS prevaricating over the guidance it's issued. We've got some confusion about the use of toilets. You're still going to have organisations doing what they want to do, regardless of the Supreme Court. How do you challenge that?
Well, I mean, some people played the violin and poured themselves large brandies as the Titanic was going down. The court cases will deal with this. I know that there are many, many women, and I hear from them, who haven't got the opportunity to take cases against their employer. They might be in 0-hour contract jobs. They have no recourse. But many do. And so we will take them to court. We will use the law against them. Human resources departments, some of whom, I mean, they're just full of these blue-fringed ideologues, will have to sit up and take notice because it's going to cost them money and time. And eventually they will be shamefaced. Hopefully, Stonewall will go down like the Titanic. And therefore, this protection racket that they were running, telling people how exactly they should operate in the workplace that contravened the Equality Act, as we now have had confirmed, you know, they can't carry on doing this anymore.
It's sad, though, isn't it? Because Stonewall, for instance, was at the forefront back in the day of promoting gay and lesbian rights. And I appreciate now there's a sense that the campaign's been hijacked. But back to the book then, where are lesbians now? I mean, you came out aged 15, I think, in 1977. If you were going to advise a teenage girl now who thinks that she's a lesbian, is she in as strong a position as you were back then? Where is she?
She's a lot better off than I was in many ways. She can't be sacked from her job or thrown out of her flat, both of which things happened to me and my friend. She can't have her children removed by the family courts for simply being a lesbian by an abusive ex. And there are laws to protect her if she turns up to stay in a hotel with her female partner. She can't be told that they're not allowed to have a double room. So she is protected, but the backlash has been the fiercest I've ever seen. In many ways, young lesbians coming out today are worse off because of the cultural norms that tell people that lesbians are bigots or that she should be called queer, or if she's a little bit butch presenting, that she perhaps is a trans man. That's all now going to start to lose its power. And I would advise young lesbians to meet other like-minded women, doesn't matter whether they call themselves queer or gay or whatever. If they believe in the right to autonomy for women, the right to operate without fear and without prejudice because of her sexual orientation, just join others and have fun.
And read this book. Julie Bindel, Lesbians, Where Are We Now? Thank you very much indeed. There we are on 3, so you can see it, for coming in today to discuss this. Thank you. Sorry, we've been a bit limited on time because we now need to have a little word with Michael Portillo to find out what's coming up on his show today.
Hello, Camilla. Good morning to you. Why do politicians always promise us that they're going to cut immigration, but actually they then put it up? We're going to be discussing 40 years of the compact disc since Dire Straits produced Brothers in Arms. What are the remaining powers of the monarch? That's going to be one of our discussions today. And why is it that Gen Z is disappointed with dating apps and turning to Jane Austen?
Great, sounds great, Michael. Brothers in Arms, one of my late mother's favourite albums. Thank you to all of my guests today. It's been a sparky one. We'll be back next week at 9:30, but do enjoy Michael's show coming up next.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been another slow start in places with low cloud. That will gradually lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine and then a few more showers developing on Monday. So taking a look at the bigger picture, we're still under the influence of this area of high pressure, still with some brisk winds though coming down from a northeasterly direction. So always cooler along that eastern coast. We'll have some lingering low cloud here, might be quite slow to break across East Midlands and the southeast of England too as we go through this afternoon. But otherwise further towards the west, plenty of lengthy warm sunshine, highs of up to 23, possibly 24 degrees across parts of western Scotland, but always cooler where you have that onshore flow across parts of Scotland and running down that eastern coast. So for much of Scotland it remains dry as we head through this evening. Still some low cloud hugging some coast, but across the far southwest that's where we could see a few showers just bubbling up that could be on the heavy side. Otherwise elsewhere plenty of fine and dry weather to end Sunday. Now as we go through Sunday evening and